Right, we're back. Hello again. Welcome one and all. We are on to chapter 14, which is called The Fiendishly Clever Plan. Chapter 15 is only a very short chapter, so I'm going to do these two together, I think, and then that will be it for my recording work today. Okay, here we go. So, chapter 14, The Fiendishly Clever Plan. The dragons protested a bit, but the boys yelled them into line, all except the Toothless, who absolutely refused to join in. "You must be joking," sneered the little dragon. "I refuse to go anywhere near a Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus. Those things are dangerous. I shall stay here and watch you all." Hiccup coaxed and bribed and threatened in vain. "You see," said Snotclout, "the Useless can't even get his own dragon to carry out this pathetic plan, and this is the person you are banking on to get you out of this mess." Said Dog's Breath the Durbrain. "Oh, shut up, Snotclout," chorused the rest of the boys. Hiccup sighed and gave up. "Okay then, Toothless, you just stay here and you miss all the fun." "Now, I want everybody to go down to the gull's nesting place and collect as many birds' feathers as you can for feather bombs." "Birds' feathers?" scoffed Snotlout. "This wimp thinks you can fight an animal like that with birds' feathers? Cold steel is the only language that a creature like that will understand." "Dragons have a tendency to asthma," explained Hiccup. "It's all that fire breathing they do. The smoke gets in their lungs." "So, you think this monster is going to die from asthma right then and there because of a few feather bombs? Why not just feed him fried herring and see whether he drops down dead of a heart attack in 20 years or so?" jeered Snotlout. "No," said Hiccup patiently. "The feather bombs are just there to make him very confused so he won't kill anybody on the way. Snotclout, Thuggery, I'm going to need to coach Fireworm and Killer in what they have to say," continued Hiccup. "I'm not putting my dragon at risk in this crazy plan," said Snotlout. "Oh, yes, you are," hissed Thuggery through gritted teeth, branding a massive fat fist at Snotlout. "Oh, this guy is such a pain. I don't know how you put up with him. Listen, Snot Features, if by some miracle you have got yourself a reasonable dragon, you get that dragon to do what Hiccup wants, or it will give me great pleasure to personally boot you all the way to Poor Point's Point and back again." "Okay then," sneered Snotlout crossly, "but don't blame me when we all get barbecued because of the Useless's mad idea." Hiccup supervised the making of the feather bombs. The boys gathered great armfuls of feathers from the gull's nesting place. And then they burgled every item of material they could find. Goggletoad's nappies, Gobber's pyjamas, Mogadon the Meathead's tent, Valhallarama's bra, anything they could get their hands on. The grown-ups were too busy consulting amongst themselves to take any notice. Snotlout cheered up a little bit because he could show off his superior skill at burglary. He managed to steal Baggy Bum's knickers right off of him as he was standing in a huddle discussing a plan of action. Baggy Bum didn't even notice. Not even when he reached a hairy hand down to absent-mindedly scratch his great big bottom. He was too busy talking about bigger and better methods of yelling. The boys then wrapped the feathers up in the material so they would fly out when the bomb was dropped. Each team of 10 boys was armed with about 100 of these feather bombs, wrapped in a great parcel made out of an old sail. Hiccup led the hooligans towards the long beach, while Thuggery took the meatheads to Unlandable Cove. The thin column of boys were excitedly chattering as they set off behind Hiccup, Wartyhog and Clueless dragging the sail at the rear. the dragons circling and diving a couple of feet above their heads. You see, Vikings are practically fearless, having been bred to be soldiers, so even Hiccup and Fishlegs had a surge of excitement at the thought of the coming battle to come. But as soon as the monster came into sight again, the boys and the dragons instantly dropped to their tummies and squirmed forward with their hearts beating hard. It was impossible that anything could be that big. Hiccup led them as near as he dared to the edge of the cliffs surrounding Long Beach. They looked down on the terrible creature snoring in front of them. His nostrils alone were as big as 6 front doors, and the stench reeking out of them made it difficult for the boys to breathe. Wartyhog, who had always had a delicate stomach, threw up disgustingly into the heather. Hiccup, Fishlegs and Clueless unwrapped the feather bombs and gave one to each boy. The boys called the dragons as softly as they could, and each put a feather bomb in their dragon's mouth. When they stood on the edge of the cliff with their dragons on their outstretched arms. This took about the same amount of bravery as it might take for you to leap off a mountain at 1,000 feet. Even with the monster hidden fast asleep, the natural reaction was to keep themselves hidden in the bracken. Hiccup tried not to breathe in. He lifted his arm to give the command to begin. "Go!" whispered Hiccup. "Go!" yelled back the boys, and 10 dragons flew up and circled around the vast sleeping head. Just as the Green Death inhaled, Hiccup shouted, "Now!" and the dragons let go of the feather bombs. The Green Death took in a breath that was half air and half feathers. He woke with a gigantic sneeze, and as he shuddered and coughed, Fireworm, who was treading the air near his right ear, gave a speech which went something like this, but a lot more irritating. "Greetings, O sea dragonus pusillanimous minimus, from my father, the terror of the seas. He is feeling like feasting on the barbarians, and if you get in his way, he will feast on you. Swim away, little sea slug, and you'll be safe. But stay on this island, and you will feel the sharpness of his claws and the fierceness of his fire." The giant monster tried to laugh sarcastically and cough at the same time, but this is virtually impossible, and a feather went down the wrong way, making him cough even more. Then Fireworm bit him on the nose. It must have felt like a flea bite, but the monster was outraged. Through streaming eyes, the Green Death made a swipe at this irritating dragon flea and missed. One giant claw tore down parts of the cliff face instead. The 9 other dragons had by this time returned to collect more feather bombs from the boys and from the boys on the cliffs. "Now!" yelled Hiccup, and with a split-second timing, they let their bombs fly. They hit their target of the Green Death's nostrils, and he collapsed, coughing again. "You cannot win," crowed Fireworm. "Wriggle back to the sea, puny worm, where you belong, and let my master have his supper." Now, the Green Death was really cross. He bounded lopsidedly after Fireworm, trying to bat away this irritating little speck of a dragon with his claws. But the Green Death had the same sort of difficulty in fetching Fireworm as you might have if you tried to catch a bluebottle fly with your bare hands. Dragons are better than humans at that sort of game, but the Green Death kept on missing because his eyes were streaming so much. "You missed again!" sneered Fireworm, enjoying herself hugely, and she flapped just out of reach of the giant Green Death's claws. The Green Death made another wild leap towards her, as Fireworm flew on around the corner of the cliff, steering the monster in the general direction of the unlandable cove. Hiccup and the boys ran after them as fast as they could, but they hadn't a hope of keeping up. Running through heather is not unlike running through knee-deep treacle, and they kept disappearing up to their knees in the bog. As Fireworm and the monster got further and further ahead in their race along the shoreline, it took longer and longer for the other dragons to fly back to the boys and return with more feather bombs. The military commanders listening among you will recognise that kind of problem, and the kind of problems that ensue from this when the supply line can no longer reach the forces at the front. Eventually, It was taking so long to reload that there came a moment when there were no more feathers tickling the Green Death's nostrils, and his eyes stopped streaming. And suddenly he could see the maddening fireworm pinpoint clear. The Green Death made a lightning reflex swipe at the red dragon and caught her in one gigantic claw. It was lucky for Fireworm that at that very moment the Purple Death came crashing around the corner and struck the Green Death heavily in the stomach. His grip loosened on Fireworm for a second, and so she flew off, panting with relief. The Green Death sat down heavily in the sea and fought for breath. The Purple Death did pretty much the same. Chapter 15. The Battle at Death's Head, Headland. While Hiccup and his team had been engaging the Green Death, Thuggery and his team had been infuriating the Purple Death. The two monsters ran smack into one another as they met at the corner of Death's Head Headland. One of Fireworm's wings was broken in two places from experience in the Green Death's grip, but she bravely flew back and made her final speech into his ear as he sat gasping for air in the shallows. "Here he is," shouted Fireworm, "my master, the purple horror who will tear you limb from limb and spit out your toenails." And Fireworm flew away lopsidedly as fast as she could with one wing trailing behind her. The Green Death was having a bad day. Now, ordinarily, a sea dragonus giganticus maximus would not dream of attacking another animal of the same breed. They avoid fighting each other because they know they are so heavily armed that the battle actually risks ending in death for both of them. However, the Green Death had been attacked and jeered at by minuscule creatures who had inflamed his outraged vanity. This creature, who seemed to think he was tougher than the Green Death himself, had then struck him heavily in the chest. The Green Death wasn't thinking too hard. He leapt at the Purple Death with his talons outstretched, breathing great bursts of fire which lit up the landscape all around like lightning. The ground and the sea shook in great earthquakes as the two gigantic monsters lunged crazily at each other, swearing the most unrepeatable oaths in Dragonese. The Green Death's foot completely destroyed Wrecker's Reef with one blow. The purple wings caused great landslides to come tumbling down from the Headland cliffs. Now their job was done. The Viking boys were running away as fast as they could, their eyes popping with terror in case one of the dragons survived the fight. Every now and then they looked back to see how the battle was going. With ghastly, eerie cries, the dragons slashed and bit and tore pieces off of one another. The sea dragon is the most well-defended creature that has ever lived on this planet. Its skin is over 3 feet thick in places, and so encrusted with shells and barnacles that it almost has the effect of armour. It is also the most well-armed creature that has ever lived on this planet, and its razor-sharp claws and teeth can rip open its own iron crust as if it were made out of paper. Now both dragons had terrible wounds, and their green lifeblood was pouring out of them. The Green Death gripped the Purple Death around the neck with a deadly throat choker grip. The Purple Death hugged the Green Death around the chest with a deadly breath quencher hug. Neither would let go, and the grip of a dragon is a terrible thing. They reminded Hiccup of a picture of one of his father's shields. It's a picture of two dragons forming a perfect circle as they ate one another, each with the other's tail in their mouth. The dragons thrashed around wildly in the surf, gagging and choking, with their eyes popping, their tails causing such tidal waves that the boys were soaked, even though they were scrambling away from the headland as fast as they could. Finally, with some last heaving shudders and grim gurgles, both mighty beasts lay still in the water. There was silence. The boys stopped running. They stood, gasping for breath, watching the motionless beasts with dread. The boys' dragons, which were flying some way ahead of the boys, also turned, and they hung still in the air. The terrible creatures didn't move. The boys waited 2 long minutes as waves lapped gently over the great motionless bodies. "They're dead?" said Thuggery at last. The boys started laughing, rather hysterically now that the terror was over. "Well done, Hiccup!" Thuggery slapped Hiccup on the back. But Hiccup was looking worried. He was squinting his eyes and straining to hear something. "I can't hear anything," said Hiccup anxiously. "You can't hear anything because they're dead," said Thuggery joyfully. "3 cheers for Hiccup!" Halfway through the boys' cheering, Fireworm let out a terrible noise. "Dessert!" she shrieked. "Dessert! Dessert! Dessert!" The head of the corpse of the Green Death was slowly lifting up and turning in their direction. "Uh-oh," said Hiccup.